Alexander, so do you want to introduce yourself for the guests?
Yeah, great. So I'm Alexander Schwartz. I'm working as a principal software engineer at Red Hat on the Keycloak team. I've been working with Keycloak for I think 8 or 9 years now.
Okay.
But
not with Red Hat, right?
I did the first pull request in 2015 as a community member.
Cool. Yeah.
And since January 2022, I'm employed by Red Hat, and yeah, it's cool. Working fully remote from in my home office near Frankfurt.
Oh, nice.
In Germany.
Yeah, there is a Red Hat office though in Frankfurt, right?
Yeah, there's one, but in these 1.5 years, I never visited it.
yeah. I can see how that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's funny. I talked to my students about how one of the interesting ways to get a job these days is actually to go and contribute to like an open source project, and then eventually you might just get noticed by the organization that sponsors it, so that you can potentially get a job doing whatever it is you really like. Is that how you kind of got to Red Hat, or was there other considerations?
Yeah, well, there've been also other considerations. So it's like I've been working as an IT consultant. I've been doing a lot of traveling before COVID. Then working with customers, setting up Java applications, doing then Keycloak for authentication and authorization. And then this project was looking for new members at Red Hat to join. That was cool, and so I applied. But then there's not only Red Hat contributing to that project. So even if you pick a project like Keycloak, there are lots of companies working in this area, and there might be other companies outside Red Hat looking for it as well. So it's not just on a single company. That's a good thing with open source projects. You might change the employer, but not the project.
Right. Yeah, so you were working on Keycloak, it kind of pulled you in. What got you into open source in the first place?
Yeah, well, I think I've been in the open source since I was maybe 14, 15.
Oh, yeah.
So there were actually networks before the internet,
I remember.
Fido, I was a Fido point, if that's something that rings a bell with you.
Fido? No.
Well, it's like your mailboxes connecting together and transfer mails like two or three times a day. So it was in the old days.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of old.
My college was actually on BitNet.
Okay.
So I do have some experience with the precursors to the general internet.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, as the internet then came up, Fido was kind of dead over time, and I think it was online with CompuServe.
Oh, right.
When they distributed all these CDs.
Yep. I remember them.
And when I had done, at least before I had CompuServe, like open source was hosted on FTP servers at that time, and you had bit FTP, so you can send an email to a service that then grabs a file, puts it in the email.
Yeah, exactly.
And
you would the hardest part that I think people don't realize, right, is you would have to send an email to the FTP server to get a listing of what was there, so that then you could send an email asking for whatever was there.
Yeah, it was time. And then you don't have to mess with all your administrator if you're sending too many emails, too many volumes. Yeah, it was back in the time. But then still, once there was an internet with CompuServe and others, I had a static website, and from static websites I went into PHP, doing like personal projects and doing programming.
Gotcha.
That was really cool. And then I think around 2000 I then gradually went into Java when I was working in the bank.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
my first website was actually in Perl, speaking of PHP. Cool. But it was pretty cool because it was like a search engine, but it would generate more Perl code to do the searches and then execute the Perl kind of on the fly, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So this is exciting driving. All right, so you've kind of gotten into Keycloak for a long time, and so what do you think is coming with Keycloak, or what's kind of hot on the horizon in your opinion?
Yeah, so with Keycloak we've been targeting both cloud and non-cloud environment at the same time for many years. So we're running OpenShift. You can still download the zip file and extract it and run it with OpenJDK, and that's really cool. And I think sometimes you want to develop on a local machine, you don't spin up too many containers anyway. You just want to have it up and running without it, and that's cool. On the other hand, integrating with the cloud native space, there are still a lot of things to do. Thinking of maybe cloud native events that we natively integrate with that, so they can get notifications in a cloud native way of when somebody logs in and does stuff. So that's going to be interesting.
Right.
And we might have more showcases where you secure your cluster with Keycloak and all your community's API server.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I still feel like it's kind of in your kind of average website is not kind of a solved problem of the, how do I get, kind of authentication just kind of out of the box, right? And, I think Keycloak is, doing a pretty good job of trying to solve for that problem.
Yeah, it's kind of a daunting problem, like managing your users. It's not like authentication authorizations, but everything a user wants to do. Like they want to register, they want to have some terms and conditions confirmed, they forget their passwords.
Right.
It's all that stuff that you don't want to reinvent because it's hard to do it right. And on the other hand, we have communities in the Keycloak space, like the financial grade API, where they kind of define the subset or the way you want to do OpenID Connect right, as right with the perspective of a bank, to make it really secure.
Right.
And this helps a lot because people don't need to worry so much. So that's good. On the other hand, we are handing out Keycloak as something that you can customize quite a lot. So you can write your own extensions and hope that it's still as secure as it was before after you added the extension.
Right. That's why the approved list of extensions is often a good idea, right?
Yeah, and I talked to a customer today. They say there are lots of SPIs, as we call them, service provider interfaces, and they say, well, we implemented extensions for 30 of your SPIs. I say, oh wow, that you are doing quite a good job there.
Yeah, that's nice. I think it really helps. Like, it's like everything else in open source world, right? It's like, adoption really helps. Once you kind of have that, whatever that snowball, it really does kind of help your product as much as it helps, the world, right? Or whatever, thing that you think is cool. So I know we had a couple other things we wanted to talk about, but now after the flustering of taking that first corner, I can't remember what it was we were going to talk about next.
No, we can talk about Keycloak, what's on the horizon still.
Yeah.
So I'm also very much into monitoring and observability. So at the moment I think, it's not official package, but you can do, if you're interested in metrics and tracing and all that stuff, you can hook up Keycloak quite easily with OpenTelemetry with the agent. So you add it as a Java agent to Keycloak, which is also written in Java, and you get lots of nice metrics, even down to the single URLs that will give you an idea, like what are usually users actually doing with my Keycloak?
Oh, okay.
Are they logging in? What part of the login flow are they using? Are they kind of using the password reset flow? So that's all then recorded, like how many times has this URL been hit? And that's really cool. Or what rearms are most active.
Right.
And we want to get, or I want Keycloak to get better in this area.
Right.
And we should expose more of the metrics, what's
Well,
happening.
I mean, it's pretty huge for like knowing where to kind of put, like your technical resources right behind your application. If you have a good idea of what people are actually, doing, it can kind of save you money and stuff without having to go and support, 50 odd different, kind of authentication methods, because some of them you have to pay for and, stuff like that. I think telemetry is really nice,
Yeah, but I think we serve two kinds of users. One kind of users is they just want to have an IAM running, identity and access management running. They don't want to customize it, they just want to have it solved.
Right.
And the other ones, they want to tinker with it and make this stuff that they really bring their business forward. And we care for both of these kind of users.
Yeah, that's I'm definitely in the bucket of I wanted to just like give me authentication, right? And then an easy way to say, okay, this user can do this and user can do that.
Yeah. But once you start, you might have ideas, right?
Right. Well, the other part, I mean, I think that's a big part of it too, is that you get as your kind of application grows, right, you really start to find, okay, this, we messed up what this role can do, right? It either has too much or too little privilege. And so when you can kind of dynamically modify that and have a good idea of what it's supposed to be doing, I think that makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
So what's the next, what would you say is the next big feature that you think is going to land with Keycloak?
Yeah, well, so we've been talking about zero downtime upgrades.
Oh, okay.
For quite some time. Hopefully that will become a reality really, really soon.
Uh-huh.
So the idea is that when you upgrade from one Keycloak version to another Keycloak version, that you can do it seamlessly in a way that you run it side by side.
Right, right. Yeah, I was gonna say, because you can't, it's one of those things where, if you're changing that user database, right, you can't, have a secondary server or whatever. Yeah. Well, and you can't even just run another one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a hard switch no matter what you do.
But people are doing lots of things already today, sometimes doing like a read-only stuff there or switching clusters. And so, and Red Hat is running Keycloak for their own customers as well. So we are eating our own dog food.
As a service?
No, but, well, no, yeah, eventually, but no, like every customer of Red Hat who's logging in is logging over an instance of Keycloak.
Oh, right, yeah.
So we're
that's
eating
been that way for a long time.
It is, and we're seeing there are lots of requests, and the requests are growing, and Keycloak has to, I don't know how to say, keep pace with that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a huge actual use case. I bet that would be really nice for that telemetry as well, because then okay, we've got all the developer logins on developers.redhat.com, right, or are suffering some sort of challenge, right, but all the ones into the customer portal is not, right.
Yeah, but we are not at DevOps yet, so but we're working very, very closely. The two groups working upstream, and the ones who are actually running this service for Red Hat for our customers.
Right.
And we brought the downtime quite down a lot, and we are now very, very satisfied with the downtime.
That's nice.
So that's cool.
Yeah. And is the rest of that infrastructure Java, or is it using? Because as I recall, a lot of that stuff is actually Drupal, right?
I'm not so much in that infrastructure. I can know a bit more how the Keycloak setup is done.
Yeah.
And then we're using lots of features there. We're using federation there, like having the user data stored in another store. So all the features that you see in the community edition, we are very, very heavy users of that functionality in lots of places. So.
Right.
Yeah. And it makes us a power user in some areas, but still, we need the community the community still finds new ways of deploying it, and we're open for that, both in contributions and ideas. And the community and the customers. Well, of course, there's the open source community, and then there's the customers who use the product that has a subscription with it.
Right, right. I didn't know they could drive where the trams go.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What's funny is that the trams in Boston, that they are all on the roads. So some of them have dedicated pathway, but a lot of them are just right in the street. And so not only is it nerve-wracking to drive around with the trams right next to you in a lane or something, but the tracks themselves, you can feel them in the car, and so you're kind of am I in the wrong space? And then I can judge the distance from another car, but judging it from a train is a little bit a little weird. So I generally avoid those roads when driving around Boston. Not that driving around Boston is all that simple to begin with.
Yeah. But when I was in the US, about us 10 years ago, 15 years maybe, they had carpool lanes. Is that still a thing?
Oh yeah. There's a few of them. Usually you see them on the highways rather than kind of regular surface roads. Carpool lanes are definitely a thing, and usually the best choice. So if you have a carpool lane option and you have somebody else in the car, they're usually the fastest route.
So what does count as a carpool? 2 people in a car?
Yeah. Okay. So more than one basically. And it's also it's time of day based too. It's you can use the carpool lane when you are, if it's not basically rush hour without other people usually. But local rules apply.
It's always local rules apply.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if this is our turn or is it the next one. I think I want the next one.
You want the next one?
Yeah.
He's giving us a fierce look here.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm not exactly driving the best I've ever driven, I'll tell you.
Okay, now he's looking at us at his back mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is a nice looking car, so.
That's
it drives pretty well though. I like how it drives. It's just I got to get used to it, which is taking a little while,
Yeah. Okay. It's the first one I'm here for KubeCon.
Yeah,
So I have some more drives
Yeah.
during the week.
So what was the we were going to talk about something else too?
Yeah, we're talking about AsciiDoc, our documentation,
AsciiDoc, that's what
our
it was.
documentation
Yeah.
as code. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually used AsciiDoc kind of like off and on for a while. It's like we actually did a documentation sprint for Fedora. I guess a few years ago now. It was really nice because it was in like it was in Spain, and then we moved to northern Italy, which neither one of I have ever been to before.
If you ever do a documentation sprint again, just let me know and I'll be there.
And you'll be there as long as it's in Spain or northern Italy. It was really nice.
Cool.
It was actually funny. We had to change our schedule when we were in Spain,
Right.
because like typically with like conferences or stuff like that, you kind of feel guilty because you're spending a lot of money for the travel, right?
Yeah.
But it made a lot of sense because something like 3/4 of the people involved were actually European, and so it made sense to do it here somewhere. And so we were planning on starting at like 8 a.m. every day and then kind of working whatever. And then we got to Spain and we were like, this is a non-starter because we couldn't eat dinner until 9 o'clock at night. And so we basically ended up shifting the schedule to start at like 10 a.m., but then work until 7, 8 p.m., which was it was really funny that, local culture dictated a change in our entire schedule. It was really great. I highly recommend, where were we? Sevilla.
Cool.
And it was great. But
But
I wrote a
AsciiDoc,
big AsciiDoc builder engine during that sprint.
Cool. And AsciiDoc, there's AsciiDoc where you write your documentation as code, and you can have your CI/CD pipeline really deliver that documentation on a steady website, on maybe other things.
Right.
Maybe you can generate main pages from that. You have your choice. And Fedora is also using Antora. Antora is then the static site generator that's built, I would say, on top of AsciiDoc.
Yeah.
And this gives you navigation on the left, a navigation bar on the top. You can have a search engine feed all that content to a search engine that's then on site.
Right.
So that makes it really, really nice.
I think that Fedora documentation sprint is where we migrated Fedora to that.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
I think it was then.
And Dan Allen did a great job on this one.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say that I'm working for I'm maintaining the AsciiDoc plugin for IntelliJ.
Oh, okay.
And if you were looking for, I'd say, the best support of Antora and AsciiDoc in an IDE, then give it a try with IntelliJ and the AsciiDoc plugin. So you will have then not only syntax highlighting in the preview, but also autocompletion like you would expect it from an IDE.
Right.
So autocompletion for the references, for the includes, and it also picked up the file structure of Antora. So it will know that if you worked with Antora, you have these things called modules and components and this special kind of cross references that work really, really nicely. And the IDE or the AsciiDoc plugin teaches that to the IntelliJ IDE.
But is it build it directly in IntelliJ?
It's a plugin. IntelliJ is an IDE, and you can install plugins like the AsciiDoc plugin. And once you install it, it has all the features.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's like I understand the concepts behind like AsciiDoc and kind of other mechanisms as well, but it's a little bit hard unless you kind of have something doing real time, for lack of a better term, compilation, because it's like I want to know what I'm writing kind of as it happens,
Yeah.
And sometimes I use the documentation, God forbid. So it's kind of it's nice to have it kind of built in like that, so you can get And then is the IDE also aware of the docs kind of as they come?
Sorry. Well, you have a live preview in your IDE of
what you're writing.
Of your writing. Yeah. You have like a split, usually vertically split editor. On the left you type, on the right you have a live preview.
Gotcha.
Like in a sub-second, once you type in a sub-second later, it will be refreshed.
Right.
In place. And you can even tell it, well, it comes with a standard layout or style sheet, CSS style sheet. And if you go then one step further and tell it, well, this is the style sheet of my live website, it will make your preview look like the real site. So if you have like maybe special roles for different parts of the text, and how should admonitions look like, how does source highlighting look like, it will all be shown in the preview, like it's on the real site.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So we went to some lengths, and there was also very good interaction with the community there.
And so with AsciiDoc, do you have, because I don't never think I ran into this too much, but is there anything like kind of a LaTeX type plugin?
Yeah, well, there LaTeX, I think it crossed my road in 2 or 3 places. So you can convert it to LaTeX eventually if you want to. You can also, if you are into math formulas, if you want to pick up only the math formula part of it, then you can, at least when you do HTML output, you can use LaTeX formulas and put them in the output, and they will render it in a nice way.
Yeah, because I run into that a lot more now that I'm teaching than I ever used to when I was programming. But like one of my classes, I have to, like teach or hopefully reteach things like slope of a line. And how to calculate it and stuff, so that.
Yeah, I think it's not so it's very good integrated in HTML previews. But if you want to prepare a PDF, the tooling is a bit, I would say, hard to handle in a polite way. There you might be better off doing a LaTeX in a real LaTeX way.
Pull out an image and drop that in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I do it sometimes, because basically the tech live set of libraries is complicated and somewhat difficult to install, and and I have somewhat mixed success with it in my experience.
But there's a project called AsciiDoc Asciidoctor Web PDF.
Okay.
And Guillaume, he's doing a very good job. He's also they are using AsciiDoc. You render HTML from that, spin it up in a Chromium, and create a multi-page PDF from that.
Oh, okay.
And this makes you really, really flexible. I know that you can start it any way you want, as long as you can fit the rules into CSS. I'm not a CSS pro, so sometimes kind of fail on that part.
CSS has its own, entertainment value. I don't know. Every time I've tried to like get good at CSS, I have failed. It's just one of those things where I just don't, I just can't get it. It's just hard.
Yeah,
I think it's an everyday thing too. Is the other problem, right? It's like programming is difficult when you don't use the tech every day.
Like for my personal homepage, I pulled up Bulma CSS, being a CSS framework.
Okay.
It's a bit, it's not so fresh anymore, but still stable and maintained and does a good job. So it's a very, very light theme of the web page, and I managed to handle that. That was cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then there's another thing on the blog called Tailwind CSS.
Oh yeah. I've used that before.
And it's like cool. Like I want to make a shadow there, and what kind of class I want to choose, and autocomplete that in your ID.
Right.
That's really, really
exactly.
cool.
That is my kind of CSS. Yes, exactly. It was funny. I was working on a site for something. I don't remember what.
Yeah.
But and I was going to use Tailwind for it, but then I ended up using MUI because and they weren't really like compatible or whatever, and I was like, this is
one or the other
from a complexity perspective. But I wanted MUI for I know what it was for, is because I wanted these really complicated rendered tables, and the MUI kind of built-ins and some of the add-ons were closer to what I needed. And Tailwind was meant to be a lightweight, kind of efficient, CSS framework, and didn't have these wonky tables I needed.
Yeah. But then, if you want to have a design or like an idea, I'm not a designer anyway. But when I wrote like a small, I now and then give AsciiDoc trainings and workshops, and for that I came up with a small collaborative editor. So people come up in a group of 3 or 5. They all open the same URL in their browser and they start typing, and they have multiple cursors like in Google Docs,
Google
maybe.
Docs, yeah. Yep.
And this is then like the real IDE or like the IntelliJ IDE, but on the left you have the text, on the right you have the preview, and you're all typing at the same time.
Oh, that's
with,
cool.
with a really,
Yeah.
really low latency, like sub 10 milliseconds or so.
Does it do it locally, or is it going out across the internet and all that jazz?
It will use WebRTC to try it
okay.
locally, and if WebRTC doesn't work for whatever reason to discover the other
Then
clients,
it like fails to public internet.
yeah, it fails to WebSockets on the public internet,
Yeah.
and so I think it's a hack, but
Yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah, right.
And so I use it in trainings a lot, and I have another upcoming training next the other week, I think. Yeah, the other week, and that's going to be an on-site training, and I did lots of online trainings on this as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm enthusiastic about AsciiDoc, and that's one of the ways I show it.
Yeah, well, when you mentioned Alan, what's his first name? Ted?
Dan Allen.
Dan. Yeah. I was like, had Ted in my head for some reason.
Don't tell him.
Yeah, exactly. But I actually met. He was one of the first people I met at Red Hat,
all right.
and we whatever talked a lot for whatever reason. I can't remember what we were working on together that made us cross paths, but so I knew him pretty well. But yeah, so he introduced me to AsciiDoc. All that,
right. He's
eons
been a
ago.
great advocate on the community there.
Yeah. So one of the things actually I really like about I know you have your favorite editor, but mine is VS Code.
Right.
And it has a really nice whatever collaborative coding plugin, which
does,
I think is proprietary, but it's still
yeah,
really good.
it's really awesome. It is.
Yeah. And so I like that a lot.
Yeah. If you're on IntelliJ, is code with me, but it came out a lot later, after like maybe a year or maybe a year and a half after Visual Studio Code was then on every live coding
laptop.
session.
Yeah.
When it comes to live coding, at least everybody who wanted to do live coding is then kind of moved to Visual Studio Code, and not so many people came back.
Yeah.
But let's see. But it's doing a good job on this part.
Right. I mean, I just like. I also love that it is mostly open source. And really quite enjoy it. Well, we are just about back.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you so much for the time. And it wasn't that harrowing, I didn't think. In Detroit, we did a lot of. There was a lot of fast stops for things like geese.
Okay.
So it's luckily we didn't.
Geese
have
in
that
Boston, all right. Oh,
no, this was in Detroit.
In Detroit,
for KubeCon.
okay.
Yeah. So.
Then I know.
However, there's no parking. So.
Ooh, wow.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. It was cool.